The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. And away we grow. Hello there, and welcome all you gardeners and growers out there. Welcome to the Green Acres Garden Podcast. My name's Kevin Jordan. I'm a teacher by day, a garden podcaster by night, and I just love plants and gardening and growing, and I'm on a mission to learn all that I can about cultivating, gardening, growing, and then share it with as many people as possible, and hopefully you're along for the ride. In today's episode, we are going to meet up and have a great conversation with Destin Noak, the Texas garden guy. Destin, I mean, it was my destiny to meet Destin, Austin. Such a nice guy, brilliant. He's got a footprint in social media, but he's really out there helping, doing what we do. He's helping people garden and grow just more effectively, more efficiently, and hopefully with more success. Before we get into that, I got to say, what's up to Austin? He is the ace of audio. Austin, how's it going there, bud?
Hello. What's up? And welcome back to all of our listeners, and hopefully welcome to some new listeners. So, hello, everybody. My name is Austin Blank, and I do the audio recording and editing on the show. Now, I'm the co-host. I hang out here with Kevin every week, and we talk to amazing plant people, and I've been along for the plant and growing journey. I started out not knowing anything about plants, and now I've got a little shade of green on my thumb, and I want to help you get that shade of green on your thumb as well. So join us here every week. We do a gardening podcast out here in the Sacramento region of California. But we also have stores now from, we're part of the Green Acres Nursery and Supply family. We've got 2 new locations out in Texas, and a third, the Hughes Plant Farm. And so those stores are in Dallas County, Collin County, and Smith County. And we are learning about the Texas area. So, Kevin, what can you say about zones and how they might be different here in California versus in Texas?
Well, dude, everything's bigger in Texas, dude. The state is massive. There are there's I think 10 unique eco-regions in Texas. And when it comes to garden zones, it really, how hot and how cold does it get? So for out here in Sacramento, Northern California, where we're at, it's 9B. So for us, we have hot, dry summers, kind of cool, wet winters. When we talk to Destin, he's down there in Harris County. Mm-hmm. So he has a similar, I think he's a 9B as well. So similar thresholds. But what's kind of cool about Texas, like I said, it's huge. It's so big. You have all these amazing kind of unique growing conditions and areas that are different zones. And so there's going to be a lot to learn. I'm stoked for it. I had a great time speaking with Destin, and I'm here to learn. I'm here as a student and to share, and I think there's so much to learn from the folks out in Texas. We've had Texas growers on before. We've had professors from Texas A&M.
Yep.
So we've already dipped our toe in a little bit, but you know what? I want more. I want to jump in that river and learn all I can about how people are growing and gardening out there in Texas.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is our first Texas-focused episode of the Green Acres Garden Podcast. And we can't have a better guest to start things off than with Destin. We had an absolute joy meeting him and talking to him. And we met with him over Zoom. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and jump into our interview with Destin and learn all there is about his journey and what he can share with us about growing in Texas. Here we go.
All right, so here I'm here with Destin Noak, the Texas garden guy. How's it going there, Destin?
Oh, it's going great. It's starting to finally feel like fall slightly here in Texas.
All right. First, we got to get at the beginning. Where did this journey begin? What is the origin of the Texas garden guy?
Yeah, so I grew up here just south of Houston, Texas, born and raised. My family grew up not really gardening. My grandma and grandpa always gardened. My grandmother grew up working in nurseries as like a teenager in Florida. And so she always had a really green thumb. And she always had gardens and plants growing, and she was really into it. But as a kid, you don't really get into things like that. You know, some people do. I didn't. It wasn't until I came back from the Air Force and I was like, kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And my dad, he said, stop thinking, go outside, go work in the garden. And that's when like everything changed. Like took my mind off everything else I had going on in my life. And you can just shut it off, and there's so much noise and static out in the world. But when you go put your hands in the dirt and walk around in the soil and get your toes in the dirt, like it takes your mind off everything else. So that's when I fell in love with gardening.
What does it take to be a successful gardener in Texas these days? I know you have there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things that you can benefit from, the sunshine, the weather, but the same things that are good sometimes can also be bad. So when the conditions get less than ideal, how do you maintain? How do you continue to be successful out in that garden?
Well, in Texas specifically, people need to understand that there are so many different parts of Texas. Not everything that works in my house is going to work for someone in, I was just in Marble Falls, which that doesn't mean anything to y'all, but it's like 4 hours northwest. And up there, they dig down a foot and they hit granite. Like they can't dig further than like a couple inches down the ground. So stuff that like me digging with my, power planer, digging 4 feet in the ground isn't going to work in Marble Falls. They're going to break their wrists hitting granite. So I think in Texas specifically, they need to focus and not get tired out, not get wore out. Don't give up and don't get discouraged because not every year is the same. Not every bag of soil is the same. It's very easy to get discouraged, but you can't give up. And I always tell people that it's real easy to get burnt out in the beginning. It's real easy to get burnt out in the beginning, trying to go too big all at the beginning. When I tell people to start, pick one thing. If you like tomatoes, just do a small tomato garden. See what that's like the first year. The next year, the next season, add peppers, add some okra, add squash, don't do a giant garden your first year when you have no idea, like what kind of pest pressures do you have? And every year is different anyway. So, it's hard to prepare, year to year, but I think just don't get discouraged. Don't overwhelm yourself and, don't work too hard. Have fun. You're going to kill plants. You're definitely going to kill plants.
I love it. Yeah. Have some fun. You have some pretty cool plants in your collection. Can you kind of let us in on what's going on in your own garden right now? What are some of your favorite plants to grow that you are already cultivating?
For me, every year I get into different plants. So like when I first started out, I was into fig trees and, you get your 50th fig tree and then it kind of gets a little bit, you can get tired of eating figs. Don't tell my buddy Phil's figs that, but you get tired of eating figs. And so
I want that problem.
Dude, there is such a thing as too many figs. Like you can get tired of eating figs. I got about 21 gallon bags in my freezer right now. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with them.
That's impressive.
But it's every year I get into something different. And this year has kind of been, the last 2 or 3 years, I've been getting into desert roses, adeniums, plumerias, things like that. And it's kind of a gateway drug into like the cactus and succulent area because, man, there's a lot of hybrids and varieties there we can get into. And I really like that, especially with my new position in my new company where I've kind of been traveling a little bit. Cactuses and succulents are a little more forgiving when you don't have to water them every single day. So that's kind of been my thing lately is cactuses and succulents, specifically astrophytums and dorstenias and things like that. So it's really specific, rare plants. They're kind of harder to find, things like that.
You brought up your desert roses. I saw a few of your videos where you're propagating. Can you tell the listeners a little bit, what is a desert rose? Because it's not actually a rose, but they're quite beautiful. And what are they and what do they look like?
Yeah. So desert rose, more specifically the Adenium obesums, Adenium arabicums, Adenium, there's a million, there's a couple, well, there's all about 12, specific species of Adenium, but most of them hail from Madagascar, and they are what you call a caudiciform. So they have these beautiful fat bellies, these big old trunks, and they are really popular in the bonsai community and cactus and succulent collectors. They become a lot more popular even I've even seen them in big box stores now. It's pretty wild seeing them. But I like them so much because they'll graft on, they're easy to graft. So you can put, a big fat belly and you can put a rarer flower. You can graft them on. They don't require a ton of water. And those thing, their caudaxes, their bellies, they're like camels' humps. They get wild and crazy. I mean, I've got some really cool ones that they were growing in pots, and there was 3 of them stuck in the same pot, and so it looks like a bunch of octopuses just trying to choke each other out. It's pretty cool. It's an easy plant to get into because it's very forgiving.
I love that. Those are my favorite. And on top of it, they're pretty interesting. They almost look like a plant from another planet. They're very kind of unique and interesting. I love all that stuff.
I think that's what's pretty common about just animals and plants from Madagascar in general. Like
Oh yeah,
think of the lemurs and the fusas and things like that. Everything.
Oh, the eyes! I love those creatures.
Yeah, things grew so weird over there. So like it's no wonder the plants are cool looking. It's awesome.
So I'm sure you've had your ups and downs in the garden, like most people. It's not a straight line. And what are some, memories that you've had in your garden journey where you've had some successes and maybe even some learning moments, as we should say, some times where you actually had a hard lesson, but then you kind of learned from it and moved on. Can you think of any like that have come to mind?
It's always there. You learn something every day when you're out in the garden. I mean, spending time in the garden doing something is the best way to tell, what you need to be doing, because I get DMs every single day asking me, hey, I've got something eating my pepper plant. What do I need to spray on it? And I was like, well, what's eating your pepper plant? And they're like, well, I don't know. I was like, well, you need to find out, you need to spend some time out there and see what is eating that plant, because that's how you know what to treat that plant with, just using this broad spectrum. I used to be that guy. I used to be the guy who was spraying every single week, hitting it with whatever. And the more time I spend in the garden, the more specific I can get with my treatments. And I feel like it's helped me out. Just time spent in the garden is not time wasted at all.
100% agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. So you brought up pests. What are some of the pests that a Texas garden will often have to, deal with?
Yes,
it's always something.
Yeah. No, it's literally something every single year. I mean, probably the most common one we get, besides ants. I mean, fire ants are probably the biggest one, But I used to be the guy that had to treat something every time I saw it. I noticed that when if you have a raised bed or a pot here in Houston, Texas, no matter what, you're going to have fire ants in it. I mean, especially whenever I bring stuff out of the greenhouse over winter. My greenhouse is a breeding ground for ants and lizards. Like that's everything in my greenhouse. But what I started noticing is these pots that, had ants in them, I started noticing how beautiful the soil was after they had spent a winter just, breaking that carbonaceous material down. And I was like, well, hold on a second here. Maybe I need to rethink like my, broad spectrum. So now I kind of let my ants do a little bit more than I'm used to. I used to be the guy who would put, one of my most recommended things for fire ants is like, orange oil. Orange oil is very effective. You do like usually 2 ounces per gallon, put them in a sprayer. I usually have to do that when I'm bringing stuff out from winter because everything's just full of fire ants. But now, unless I'm moving stuff around or I'm about to dig in it, I'm not too worried about the fire ants. I'm not too worried about the fire ants anymore. In my yard, yes, but in the garden, no. And then it's always the squash vine borers. Squash vine borers are a nightmare down here because most people aren't getting their starts in the ground soon enough. If you're getting your plants in the ground sooner before the vine borers of last year, are hatching, you're typically just needing to get ahead of that. And there have been like advancements in, vine borer resistant plants, like the acorn squash and the spaghetti squash. Those are going to be a lot more vine borer resistant. People even put like trap crops out for them now. But, getting ahead of the vine borer, with some neem oil treatments will definitely help out. Most people are being reactive. When they see something like vine borers, you got to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes. So I'm usually starting with some neem oil treatments, maybe once a month, but when I go ahead and plant my starts, rather than once you see the vine borers, it's kind of too late.
There we go. It's always another challenge to overcome. I like it. When it comes to weeds in your garden, and out there in Texas, how do we deal with the weeds? Are you using pre-emergence? Are you just hand ripping them out? What's your method of choice?
Because I do everything in a raised bed in my backyard, I'm not usually using any pre-emergence or anything like that. Most of it is just, using my hands to pull most of it. I find that empty beds get weeds on them. So like if I have an empty bed, rather than just leaving it open for something's going to grow in an empty bed. Like something is going to grow, whether you planted it or something else plants it. So if I have an empty raised bed, what I like to do a lot of times is I'll put a tarp over it, or I'll put plants in potters or trays or whatever, because if I got a plant sitting there, a weed can't grow through. But in my yard, my company, Nelson Plant Food, we do have some, pre-emergent fertilizers, weed and feed, and some post-emergents. But I use those in the front, primarily in the front yard where I don't have my veggies growing.
Yeah,
Mostly
gotcha.
Mostly pulling weeds by hand. I've spent a lot of time pulling weeds.
Yeah, well, talk about therapy, man. That's for me. Every time I rip one of those weeds out of the ground, I just feel a little bit better.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. What are some of the best plants in your opinion? Like, I'm sure you have neighbors and you see probably like a standard yard, but things change, times change. Kind of the culture of the garden changes, and you notice people kind of have shifting tastes. What are some of the shifting tastes out there? Like, what are you noticing people growing now that are doing really well in Texas that maybe folks really weren't growing as much before?
Yeah, I was just at an event on Thursday actually talking about this exact topic. There has been a huge shift in Texas with this current generation of homeowners and gardeners, to where they're not, at least in Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, I have observed that most people are not doing the four seasons color change like in their flower beds anymore. You're not doing the vincas and then switching over to the snapdragons and the pansies. Like most people have made the switch from the annuals to more of the perennials, and specifically Texas natives. The focus on native plants has really grown. The problem with the term native Texas plant in Texas is there's so many plants that are native to one part of Texas, but not the other. It's a huge state. And so not all native plants in Texas do well in every single region. And so people are learning what works for them. And I definitely see this generation growing more native plants and becoming a little more ecologically conscious with their gardens and their flower beds and their yards in general, just because
Love it.
I think the population here in Texas has grown so much that, and people are starting to pay more attention and do more research and really just be more ecologically conscious when it comes to their yards.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the side benefits is those native plants down there. I mean, like you said, if you get those plants that are, regionally native, they're going to tolerate your soils, the weather, the climate, all of that, the pests even, because they've been doing it for millions of years. And so I think there's a definite benefit to using them, not just for helping the environment, but man, if you really just want to make the argument, it's just an easier plant to take care of and maintain. I think that's valuable too.
Yes. And we've had some big freezes and recently, like last year we had 5 inches of snow here in the Houston area.
Wow.
It was crazy. I mean, the whole Gulf Coast, I mean, I was in New Orleans not too long ago and they had 10 inches of snow there and Baton Rouge.
Whoa.
And it was crazy. And so the shift from the people who are losing their citrus trees that have been in the ground for 20, 30 years, even the fruit tree, people are switching over to different, varieties, the persimmons, the pomegranates, the figs that are a lot more cold tolerant. My buddies are nuts for persimmons right now. I don't have the room for one, but it's cool seeing the transition of what people are into and what people want to get into nowadays.
You brought up the natives. I love all that. I think we're seeing that across the nation. There's this big resurgence of learn about the native plants that are native to your region and get them into your garden, get them into your yard as much as possible because they have so much benefit. Is there a native plant down there that you have incorporated into your garden, one that speaks to you a little bit?
I'd say Texas sage is one of my favorites. It's become really popular in a lot of landscaping. You usually know when something becomes really tolerant when you start seeing it in all the Chick-fil-A's. Like the Chick-fil-A's are like the trendsetters down here. If if it's growing out there by the drive-through at Chick-fil-A, then it's a hardy plant. Like they'll have your Esperanzas, your Turk's caps, the drift roses. Everybody's got the drift roses in the Texas sage because you can just let them do their thing. They're great for the pollinators. They have these beautiful flowers. They bloom pretty much spring until late fall. I've got one that I put in a raised bed back here in the corner, and like I can't walk past it without just my ears vibrating with bees. It's so fantastic, and it doesn't require a lot of care. I mean, it's kind of set it and forget it. I pulled up my ornamental shrubs out front, and I'm replacing them all with Texas sage in the front. Like I want everything to have multi-purpose. Like I don't want something that just has boring greenery, doesn't do anything. Like I don't like grass that much. I want something that provides either fruit or something for the pollinators. That's me. Like everything's gonna have dual purpose.
Dude, my garden brother from another mother. I right there with you, man. I love that. That's a great way of thinking. You talked about growing some tomatoes earlier, so you piqued my interest. What are some of the go-tos for you if someone's in Texas right now and they're like, man, I'm thinking about starting a garden, maybe next year, maybe this winter? What are some of your favorite, edible crops and plants to grow? I know you mentioned the figs. We have a lot of people in our sphere who just love figs. But for you, what are your tried and true, your favorite edibles for the Texan garden?
Yeah, so every year I do tomatoes. I usually start my tomatoes around Christmas indoors in my garage with grow lights. I start my peppers at Thanksgiving.
Whoa, that's really so early.
Yeah,
I love it.
I had really good success this last year with some really hot peppers. With peppers, the hotter the pepper, the longer they take to germinate, the longer they take to grow and get. So I had some like really hot ones this year, and I don't eat hot peppers. I grow a lot of hot peppers. I do not mess with spicy stuff. That'll ruin my day. But I start a lot of my stuff inside. Last year was the first year that I got into soil blocking, which was kind of a little. We had a guy on and he was like preaching it, and I was like, I got to try this out. And so I was surprised how well the germination rate went with those. So I'm going to try everything in soil blocks this year. I'm going to try everything.
I love that. I got a little soil blocker myself for my classroom, and it's been a few years since we've really kind of used it. Maybe you've just motivated me, but for our listeners, can you tell them what a soil block is and how that works?
Yeah, it looks like the oldest contraption in your garden. The really good ones are made in like England. I would highly recommend if someone listens to the podcast wants to get one, don't go on Amazon and buy the cheap like metal one made in China. I think the brand's called Ladbroke. They're made in England. They're about $40-$50, but I'm telling you, they're worth the investment. Don't buy the mini one that's the 1x1. Buy the 2x2 square. And what it is a little metal stamp, and you make your soil recipe. You wet your soil. I usually do some Pro Mix. I'll usually sift it pretty fine. Pro Mix, worm castings, and the mindful gardener, the mindful farmer. He's got a lot of recipes on this. But you take your wet mix and you grab it and you squeeze it until it like will stay firm, like in your hand, and then you take your little compactor, your little soil blocker, and you mush. It's hard for me to explain.
Well, it's like Play-Doh, or you squeeze, you kind of push it through it, and out comes at the other end is a nice cube of soil. Yes,
and it doesn't seem like it's gonna when I did it the first time, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this stupid this little soil block. I'm gonna get it wet. I'm gonna put the seed in here, and then a day later, it's just gonna fall apart. And the total opposite happened. The whole thing stuck together, and I had like the best germination rate I've ever had. I didn't have any, transplant shock, because that's the biggest thing with it is every time you pull a seedling out of that seed starting tray, you're ripping the roots out, you're pulling it through the roots through the drainage hole. When you do the soil blocks, there's none of that. So not only do you have really good germination that air roots can breathe. But when you go to plant them, there's no transplant shock because you're not transplanting them. You're just planting them for the first time. So I had 100% transplants. I had the most peppers I've ever had this year. I had the most squash I've ever had this year. It was so crazy. So I will be doing a ton of soil blocking. I highly recommend. I've got a bunch of videos on soil blocking. I'll be doing more, but I recommend if someone wants to get into soil blocking for the first time, go check out the Mindful Farmer. He was a guest on our podcast and he got me into it. And I was like, it clicked. And then everybody else on the podcast has tried it and we're all in on it. It's so cool.
No plastic required. You
No.
can do all that growing and cultivating without any plastic, 4-packs or 6-packs or whatever. It's pretty cool.
He even that guy, he made a free little design on how to make your trays out of cedar pickets. And so you can sit your cedar pickets in like a tray of water and the pickets wick the water up to the box. It's so bizarre. Like it's even the trays. You don't even have to have plastic trays. You can use cedar pickets like in the fence. It's
very cool.
It's crazy. It's really neat. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah. So in Texas, peppers, tomatoes, probably the early girl is one of our favorites. We have to do early girls every single year. We do like some violet jaspers. Red snapper has become a really popular one because it's a really good slicer. And then we'll throw in some paste tomatoes, but they have new varieties coming out every single year. So I just have to make sure my wife will kill me if I don't grow the early girl and grow a bunch of crazy varieties. I have to at least grow the early girl and then I can mix in some other wild ones.
What do you think are the most important lessons that you've learned out in the garden? Or if someone's thinking about it right now, man, I live out in Texas. I want to have a garden. I want to grow some plants, whether they're edibles or, ones for the pollinators. What would be your advice to that person who's listening, who's like on the edge, maybe considering, or they gave it a shot one year and it wasn't quite as successful as they hoped and they gave up? What would you say to that person?
It's hard for the first time gardener to start. So like say someone who doesn't garden watches one of my videos. They see my garden is full of like trees and raised beds. And, I did not start out with, 20 something raised beds in a giant greenhouse. I started out with, building, raised beds out of plywood and, pallet material. You don't go out and if it's your first year, don't go out and buy a bunch of raised beds. Get some smart pots. Smart pots are great for first-time gardeners. I highly recommend smart pots, and they're pretty affordable as well, and they don't break down. But you go out and grow out of 5-gallon buckets that you already have laying around the house. Don't go out and spend your whole paycheck on raised beds. I mean, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but I saw a company the other day post a video of their grow shelf, and it's literally just a shelf with grow lights on it. It's 4 shelves with grow lights on them. And it was $400. And I was like, no, I mean, I made one out in my garage that has an additional shelf for less than half of that, so try to DIY as much as you can, then you can always go back and upgrade things. You can always go back and, add another raised bed. You can add a bigger raised bed. Don't go out and spend a ton of money first thing in the beginning. And then also find a local nursery. Find a local nursery, find a master gardeners program, talk to people in your local area. Don't just watch my videos and think that you're going to figure it out. Go find some people, find a community that knows what grows in your area, because the local folks are going to be the ones that help you out and tell you exactly what grows in your area and give you the best recommendations. Here in Texas, we have an AgriLife extension. It's through Texas A&M. Every county has an ag extension agent, and every county has that resource. And they have a calendar that literally tells you, hey, these are the varieties of tomatoes that do well in your area. This is when you should start them from seed indoors. This is when you should transplant them outside. If you're looking for like literally anywhere, put in your zip code and put ag extension in there, and it'll bring up a resource. Your tax money goes to that stuff. Use that resource because you're paying for it, whether you're using it or not. I mean, they'll even have resources that tell you what varieties of like apple trees do well in your areas, because people don't know that you need certain chill hours in certain areas to get apples, to get pears, to get peaches. I mean, use those agencies and those resources to your advantage because you're already paying for them. You might as well be using them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a chilling requirement myself. It happens on the weekends. I tell my I gotta have so many hours of chilling before I can go back to work. Um, but
Me too.
for sure, right? Well, you brought up that you are part of a podcast as well, a gardening podcast, and I love that. That's awesome. Can we talk a bit about that? So let me get this right. It's the Garden Party podcast. They beat us to the name, Austin. I thought we were the only garden party in town. That's awesome. What is it? What can people expect? And where can they catch it?
Yeah, so it's a live stream. We do it every Wednesday on YouTube and Facebook every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We've got my friend Phil's Figs. He's from North Carolina, and he specializes in figs and other fruit trees. We also have my friend Des, who's gardening with Des. She's in Austin, Texas. She's a pollinator native master gardener. And then most recently, we brought on my good buddy Josh, the plant techie. He's out of South Carolina, and he is a fruit tree expert like I've never met. And not only that, he is a techie. So he has been a huge help to me with that. And so each week we bring on a guest from around the country, from around the world to talk about, what's specifically going on in their garden. We try not to be, the Texas Garden Party podcast, the North Carolina garden. We try to be, something that can apply to everybody. We bring in backyard gardeners, homesteaders, preppers, all kinds of stuff. So you never know what you're going to hear week to week. And it's very fun and it's live. It's unedited. I don't edit. I don't do anything. It's the least it takes no effort for me to do the garden party. It's the most fun and the least amount of effort I spend every single week. And I love it. I've been doing it. I have not missed a week in 3 years doing the garden party. And so it is fantastic. And you can find it everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Apple, and I think we're streaming on Instagram now too. So,
all right, Destin, well, we'll get you out of here. I really appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Destin, the Texas Garden Guy. Please check him out. You can see him on Instagram. Sounds like TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. Did I miss anything, Destin?
I think I have a Pinterest account somewhere. I just haven't used it.
You can see him on Pinterest, maybe America Online. I'm not even sure. But Destin, thank you so much for your time. I loved learning from you, and hopefully we can talk some more in the near future because I feel like there's a lot more that we could discuss and have fun with.
Yeah, we'll have to get you on the garden party sometime, Kevin.
Oh, dude, I'd love to. Are you kidding? That'd be awesome, man.
We'll make it happen.
All right, I appreciate it.
All right, we are back from our interview with Destin. Big thank you to Destin, the Texas Garden Guy. I really had a great time hanging out with you, and I hope to hang out with you again, virtually or in person. We got to make something happen. Kevin, I see you smiling over there. What did you think of your interview with Destin? Dude,
you never know what we're gonna get. It's like a box of chocolates, right?
Right. Yeah.
Destin he's like a caramel-filled chocolate. He's what you want. He's so awesome. I loved it. I didn't know what to expect. He was amazing. He gave a great interview, and he's so warm and kind. By the end of the interview, I was like, even though we're on Zoom, like I wanted to give him a high five and a hug.
Right.
Like he had that kind of energy.
It's a good plant person that is willing and open and wanting to give garden knowledge out.
He's absolutely
right.
And he reminds me of so many other gardeners and green thumbs we've met who are just super kind. They're obviously passionate and enthusiastic about growing. And he's on his own journey, and he's there to help anybody else along the way as well. I love that. I think there's golden roads ahead for Destin, and so hopefully we can get him back on, talk some more, learn from him. I think he's done so much in his own garden with planting trees and the raised beds, and the fertilizing, the soil, growing things that you like, and then maybe growing things you don't like, and then giving that to your friends. But there's so much to learn from him. I think we definitely have to come back and have some more sit downs with him because, dude, so much fun. I loved it.
I totally agree. And this has been fun to focus on a new region. I like learning new things and new. My name is Austin. It's the capital of Texas.
There we go.
I think I'm due to go on a little field trip. We should go out there and meet some people out there. Maybe do some interviews. I think that'd be a ton of fun.
Let's go.
So I think we'll definitely plan on bringing more Texas content to our new family members out there. We want to welcome all of you out there in Texas, in these counties where our stores are and beyond. We want to welcome you into our our family here, where we talk every week about growing. And it'd be fun to just bring you guys on board on this train.
We want to, it's all go together.
Yeah.
We can go far. There's so much to learn. I think Texas is a pretty special place, and all the states that kind of border that, I think they have some similarities in there as well. We've heard of people crossing the border from Oklahoma coming into a Green Acres.
Yep.
We really just want people to be successful and have fun out in their gardens and grow as much as humanly possible. So I think there's just more to learn, man.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's all that we have for this week. Kevin, go ahead and take us out.
Thank you, Destin Noak. A great interview, a great week, man. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And also, a big shout out to anybody who's listening, who's in Texas or anywhere nearby. We love having you. Come back next week for more garden adventures. Happy gardening to you all. And please, never stop growing.